Our top focus right now is the death sentence awarded to 8 Indian former naval officers by the state of Qatar. External Affairs Minister Dr. S Jaishankar has met with the families of the 8 Indians who've been given this death penalty. He has stated, and I quote, "The government attaches the highest importance to this case and will continue to coordinate with the families in this regard." Meanwhile, Qatar has failed to provide India with the official copy of the judgment from its court, which handed down the death sentences to the 8 former Indian Navy officers. One cannot imagine, of course, what the family members and friends of the veterans would be feeling at this point in time. Qatar has refused to share any case details with India. The question, of course, arises, how do we then bring back our 8 Indian officers who have been illegally detained and now awarded a death penalty in Qatar on charges of spying? Before we open up this conversation, we quickly listen in to the statement issued by the Chief of Navy, Mr. R. Hari Kumar.
Court hearing. It was supposed to have been transcribed and provided on Sunday. It is Monday. When I get back, we'll have a look at it. But you have heard the MEA statement on this. Every effort is being made by the government to ensure that we take up through the legal course and find relief for our personnel.
Joining me on the broadcast is Ambassador KP Fabian. I also have with me Major Shashi Asthana, and we have with us Overthe Qatari on the broadcast as well. Ambassador Fabian, if you can hear me, sir. Yes, Ambassador Fabian, if you can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, I'd like to begin by asking you, Qatar is not extending any information to India. We do not have a copy of the judgment, and they've not given any details. As per reports, the entire trial has been rather opaque. How exactly does a country then navigate this sort of a situation, sir?
Well, let me put it this way. As we know, 7 hearings have been held since March 2023, and the embassy had appointed a legal team. Obviously, the verdict, the text of the verdict, the legal team will certainly get it, and from the legal team, the embassy also will get it. But we know the pronounced verdict as it has been sort of put out. Now, as regards to the opaque manner which you suggested, well, it has been rather opaque, because I've been told, of course this has to be cross-verified, that one could not take any sort of pen or pencil or paper to the court. But anyway, these are certain rules which they have. We should, at this stage, I should say that we should just respect them. But the legal team will certainly get the written text. And since the legal team would know their Arabic, we can be sure that what the charges were and what the questions were, the legal team has full knowledge.
So, Ambassador Fabian, in these sort of cases, does India then fight the case in Qatar, or do we then approach the ICJ, the International Court of Justice?
Thank you. To my mind, we have 4 options, not exclusive options. One can exercise them, some of them simultaneously. 1, the legal process. That is, this was a court of first instance, and in a previous case involving espionage of 3 Filipinos, one of whom was sentenced to death, the Court of Appeal reduced it to life imprisonment, and in the case of the other 2 Filipinos, the length of the sentence was reduced. In other words, Qatar has a system of delivering justice if a lower court has imposed too harsh a punishment. That's point number 1. At the same time, we should try through the diplomatic channel, that is, our ambassador, foreign minister, or even a special envoy. That also we should try. But the third is, well, diplomatico-political, that is at the summit level, that is between the Prime Minister and the Emir of Qatar. And the fourth is, of course, putting pressure on Qatar through friendly governments, and if that doesn't work, ultimately going to the ICJ. But in my mind, the fourth option should be the last option, and we should pursue the other three options simultaneously.
Ambassador Fabian, what is the likelihood of then bringing in, as you said, friendly governments and common allies into the situation?
No, before that, let me answer a question which you didn't ask me. Having been Joint Secretary Gulf dealing with Qatar since 1988, and then later going there as ambassador, I can assure you that there is no question of these 8 of our nationals being executed. Qatar does not have a tradition of executing. The last execution was that of a Nepalese daily wage worker in 2020 or 2021 who had knifed a Qatari national to death. But that was after a gap of 20 years. Point number one. Point number two is that Qatar recognizes the importance of its relations with India, and Qatar certainly would not like to spoil those relations by executing 8 of Indian nationals. And the third thing is that it is a custom in Qatar to give pardon at the time of Ramadan. So, therefore, I would almost rule out their execution.
Okay, even if we rule out, Ambassador, as you said, their execution, the charges still are pretty serious. The charges of spying, not for India, but for Israel. So how does then one take this issue up anyway? Like I said, this is not a case, as you'd mentioned earlier, of the Nepali citizen who had knifed another Qatari citizen to death. These are matters where the Qatari government and the Qatar justice system would have to provide then proof and evidence of what they're claiming.
Well, let me put it this way. This is a matter of national security, as you put it, and it's very, very sensitive. At the same time, regarding the proof and evidence which you mentioned, innocence or guilt has to be proved in a court of law. Okay? It cannot be proved through diplomatic exchanges. So, and that is why I said we should go the legal route as far as possible, but without waiting for the completion of that process, we should start the diplomatic and the diplomatico-political process. And let me put it this way, Qatar seems to be convinced that it has evidence of our people having indulged in espionage. Now, their proof or their evidence that they have may not be valid or not. But the point is, they seem to be convinced. So I think we have to, fight this case in their court to establish that our people are innocent. But that is a different matter from seeking. First of all, we have to get the death sentence reversed. That is the most important part of it. And later we will see the length of the sentence of imprisonment. That again can be reduced because we have an agreement with Qatar for exchange. So we have to do it step by step. We should not be in too much of a hurry. Hurry doesn't give the right results.
Okay, and what do you make, Ambassador, of the timing at which this particular judgment has come out, given everything that's happening in the Middle East and how there is speculation that we do expect now for the coming decades the alliances within Middle East and their alliances with the world to be reshaped and to be changed?
Well, I beg to differ. I do not think that there is any linkage between what is happening between Israel and Palestine at this moment and what has happened and this verdict, because as we all know, the trial started in March 2023, and after 7 sessions, the verdict was delivered on the 26th of October. So I don't think we should connect matters which are not really connected.
Okay. At the same time, Ambassador, before I move on to bring some other voices as well, this is, of course, the Indian government has, ever since the naval officers were detained, they've been in the process of filing for bail applications and have been fighting hard. Why do you think then, if you say that the relations between India and Qatar are good, and the fact that the 8 naval officers will, as per you, never be executed because Qatar will not want to spoil its relations with India, why do you think that they've not then extended any sort of judicial remedies to our officers?
I don't think there was any question of bail before a verdict is given. And as you know, the families had sought pardon. Again, there is no question of giving a pardon before the legal process is completed. So I think we have to wait for the legal process to be completed.
Okay. All right. Ambassador, I'll come back to you in just a moment. Let me bring in Vijay Nair, an Indian Navy veteran, into the conversation as well. Mr. Nair, what do you make, sir, of the latest developments that have come out? I'd just firstly like to understand your perspective.
Hi, this is Vijay. And, I totally agree with Fabian, sir. I've been hearing his view on the other, wherever I've heard on the channels. So the entire event unfolded, if you see, last August, when they were arrested and they were put in here the solitary confinement, and then they were, 2 of them bundled together. The entire thing, what I feel as a veteran, purely my view, is that the Qatar, they had not been given any option even to appeal, even to defend themselves. They were given a chance to speak to their families also somewhere midway, and then the trials, the 7 sessions which happened, and finally the verdict was handed over to them couple of days back, 2-3 days back. And there has been a huge uproar since then, from the time the death penalty has been awarded. But as a community, we were pretty much aware from last 1 year what is happening. All are very well decorated veterans, most of them out of those 8 naval personnel. So my personal view, I totally agree with Fabian, sir, is that the verdict had to come out, and post this verdict which has come out, there are many ways which we will approach. And even today, Chief of Naval Staff had made an announcement. There's a news where he had announced that the MEAs, MEA as well as the fraternity itself, they are looking towards this case. They are waiting for the legal opinions. And I'm pretty positive that going forward, death penalty, the death, definitely that won't happen. And there would be much lesser courses which will be happening going forward. So we will have to wait and watch. And I'm pretty optimistic, along with the entire community, that things would be eased out rather. So that's
yes. And Mr. Nair, at the same time, sir, is it not unusual the quantity that we're talking about here? 8 Indian naval officers. Usually when you hear of these sort of cases, even in the case of a Kulbhushan Jadhav, it was 1 man that was accused by Pakistan. Here there are 8 Indian naval officers being accused.
Yeah, we have to understand the organization for which they were working, that is the Al Dara, who were tasked or who were engaged in training the Qatari armed navy or the armed forces.
Yes.
So probably as a veteran, when you come out of service at whatever age, when you come out as a short service, that time you are 32 years. When you come out of a permanent commission, you are 42 years. So definitely they are going to seek a second career option. And if I understand, I have read somewhere that there was, as part of relocating a veteran, personnel, there is a lot of work has been done on that in order to relocate armed forces personnel. So this agreement with this particular company was also part of that, as a relocation of personnel. So probably in a good faith, they had joined that company, and the MD of that company, if I'm not a Commander Purnendu Tiwari, he was also the recipient of the Bharatiya Pravasi Award, if I'm not wrong, that is to foster relation between two countries. And that happened in 2013. So it comes as a pretty surprise. As far as the numbers are concerned, of course, there were 8 people who were working, and there was the Qatari, the Omani owner himself who was there, but he was given a bail and at a much lesser this thing on some 20% or so. That surprises me. That surprises me.
And also the fact, Mr. Nair, that of course there's no clarity right now from Qatar as to the exact charges against the officers, but this is not espionage for India, but espionage for a foreign state, and that too happens to then be Israel. Is that also surprising for you?
That's what comes as surprising. Maybe I won't directly relate this news coming at this time when Israel and Palestine is going through it and what side we are taking. I don't relate this news to that particular news. Maybe it's an outcome of that trial which commenced, and out of those 7 hearings, the outcome has come. As Sir rightly said, unless the verdict comes, there won't even be a chance of appealing for a pardon. So I'm sure, looking positively at this and knowing the Qatar and the relation which we have, hoping for a best thing,
Okay, all right. I'll bring you back in just a moment. Major Shashi Asthana with us as well. Major Asthana, I'd just like to understand your perspectives as far as the latest details have come out of the situation. There is, in fact, no information that is coming in clearly from Qatar as far as the charges are concerned, but there is some sort of vague speculation that the 8 former Indian Navy officers were spying for Israel in Qatar. Do the numbers and do these charges leave you surprised?
Yes, certainly there is. It is a surprising news, number one. Number two, my sympathies to the families of all these officers. They are all veteran officers, and some of them are decorated. One of them decorated by the Qatari government itself. Another one again decorated for the adventurous activities. So there are, and they have been veterans, and they did pick up a job in a company, and a company was training the military officers of Qatar, and therefore, but there are few things. I mean, taking away from the emotions, let's see the statement of facts. There is no doubt that irrespective of what the media is saying, and there are a whole lot of things on social media, this trial has started long back. So I don't find a very great connection between this and what is happening in Israel and in Israel-Hamas war.
Major Shashi, it's simply, sorry to interrupt you, it's simply the timing of the judgment.
Yeah, because
of course you're right. The trial started the trial has been going on. They were arrested last year,
so
and the trial has been going on for a while.
Yeah, the charges were framed earlier. So if the charges were framed earlier, and I don't think there is any information with the Ministry of External Affairs or anybody that there is a change in charge. There is no change in charge. That's one issue. The second issue is that consular access has been given. The ambassador has met them. Now, if these two things have happened, I don't think anybody has said that there is a case of unfair trial. This also has not come up. Right. So therefore, this makes me believe that there may be something. Now, what was that something? That will come out only when we get the final verdict and when we get everything in black and white. And I'm sure the government of India and the Indian Navy and everybody, all of us put together, are going to fight the case on the legal basis. What is the legal system of Qatar? Yes, we can keep commenting, but then that is their legal system. And when an officer chooses after retirement, when he chooses to work for a company, which is a foreign company, and he chooses to locate himself in that company, he has to sign that he is going to abide by the laws of that particular country. So that is the that is the anomaly. Now, the case has to be fought on the legal basis, I'm pretty sure. And also the other issue is that, again, without getting emotional, Qatar would also not like to do something very drastic for one simple reason, because they have so many Indians who are working there. And injustice or a visible injustice can create fair amount of problems for the Qatar itself. So therefore, I think whatever case is there, we will have to analyze the case objectively as it comes out. Also, let me also say that it is not that, let's say hypothetically, I'll take two contingencies. Either the case is wrong. If it is wrong, then certainly once we file appeal, they are also there is also, I believe, the pardon is also given during Ramadan, and I think that is what we are all looking at. That may also happen, because between the two countries, it may well happen that even if, let's say, hypothetically, legally they have done something wrong as per the laws of that country, maybe that they may be sent back at the end of the day. That is what we are hoping. That is the best hope. So this is in case the charges are not of that kind. And the question is, is there a precedence that a veteran or a serving officer has spied? Yes, there is a precedence. There have been cases. You must have heard of Samba spying case, and many officers were punished. So it's not that a person cannot be lured. A human being can be lured. It's not that he can't be lured. And the reason or motive of Israel spying on Qatar is also quite bright. So these two things also add up. But what they did, whether they did or they did not do, that I think we will have to wait for the judgment to come out. We will have to wait for more news to come out. And any speculations, whether for them or against them, may be incorrect. But certainly, as a country, we must do everything best possible. And it does surprise me why all 8 of them, and that too decorated soldiers, how come they all would have gone astray or got lured altogether? And one of the reason is that the kind of work which they are doing, maybe that everybody, same kind of information is with everybody. So it's also in the collective charge, because we also read some amount of law in the army. Then what has happened is that if there is a particular information which has been leaked out, and if all 4 of them are involved, or all 8 of them are involved, and all of 8 of them are in know of that information and the leak, then they cannot pinpoint on one guy, and all 8 has to be collectively charged. This is the methodology which normally happens.
Okay.
But
at the same time, Shashi Sana, just one last question to you before I bring in Adit as well. The charge here is rather serious. Espionage is not to be taken lightly. If the charge is so serious, why do you feel that the Qatari state, the Qatari government or the judicial system have not then given proper copies of the judgment or the charges or the evidence and the proof to India?
Okay, I'll answer that. See, in our courts, whether it is IPC or that it is a military act, that is our Army Act, in both cases, we give a copy of charge. But the same thing is not applicable to that particular government, because their judicial system is slightly different. So, while we may, as per our procedures, yes, it is absolutely absurd that everybody must get a chance to defend himself, and he is supposed to be given the charge sheet, and then he is supposed to be charged, and he is also supposed to be given something called as friend of the accused. Whereas in our case, in defense, even the court also gives the defense. There is no change in IPC and Army Act. So therefore, yes, it sounds us differently, but we really don't know what is the procedure and what are the kind of charges, and under what those charges, what Qatari's government is compelled or is obliged to give them the legal remedy. That will take a little time once the news comes out and once we have more details.
Okay. Adit, bringing you in, just like to understand from your perspective, India and Qatar actually have really good relations, not just economic ties, but in terms of the sheer number of Indians who live in Qatar, the number of Indian companies that are operating out of Qatar, and vice versa. I'd just like to understand from you, do you feel that this case depending on what the next legal steps could be, does it have the potential to actually sour those relations between India and Qatar?
Thanks for having me. I personally don't think it will sour the relations between India and Qatar, primarily because there's one thing that we've not looked at, which is the operationalization of the India-Qatar prisoner repatriation treaty that was signed in 2015. So, eventually, if things were to go absolutely south and all recourses for the for the 7 officers and the 1 sailor were completely exhausted, and they were not pardoned even during Ramadan, all the 3 other levels of jury that will essentially be put out to save them. Then this particular aspect is something that the Indian government will have to look into, which is the India-Qatar prisoner exchange treaty. Or it may come down to the point where, it may require the intervention of Prime Minister Modi with his counterpart eventually to basically iron this out. As far as the issue goes at this point, I think the one aspect which is extremely shocking is the execution order at this point of time. Like Ambassador Fabian had also mentioned, that it's been 20 years since Qatar has essentially pronounced any execution judgments. So that was the shocking part in this whole scenario. So we have to look at whether or not the Israel-Palestine conflict is coming into play, whether or not the Arab Cold War incidents is essentially coming into play, and whether or not the eigt is becoming a bit of an issue, because the eigt coming into operations does somewhere diminish the standing of Qatar in the Middle East corridor, where India, UAE, Israel, and Saudi Arabia become close-knit partners, where the foundations are laid down on the basis of the Abrahamic Accords. So that is something which needs to be looked at in greater details. So personally, I think the 8 Indian Navy officers and the sailor, I think they're just being used as a pawn in a greater geopolitical game at this point in time.
Right, absolutely. That's all the time that I have. I thank all of our experts and panelists for joining us to take this very important debate forward.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.